It's spoiler in time. You can't drive 55, but this is episode 55. I'm Tom Merritt.
I question your premise. I believe it is possible for a human being to drive 55 miles
It is impossible. No one can drive 55. It's either 54 or less or 56 or faster.
Okay, fine. Hey, man, we've been watching a whole bunch of stuff. Before we get started, I didn't get the chance to plug it during the show, but I've been watching some Vice documentaries, and normally, you know, if it says 5 minutes or longer on YouTube, I have a chance to skip it, but I found myself watching a half-hour documentary about an undercover cop who tricked an autistic high school student into selling him $20 of weed. It's this much. And the kid, it was part of a giant sting operation, 21 Jump Street style. It's riveting, man. It's beautiful storytelling, and those guys at Vice, I hear they're biased, but they certainly do effective, interesting, fascinating journalism, and I applaud their work, and this is a really good story.
And it's just, what's the YouTube channel? Is it youtube.com/Vice?
I'm sure if you just, let's see, yeah, uploaded by Vice. It looks like it came out back in 2014 during the summer. And the most heartbreaking part of this whole thing was that the parents explain that the kid was crying not because he was locked in a jail cell, but because he found out that his first real friend was a cop pretending to be his friend. And it's utterly heartbreaking. He ended up...
And for something that is actually pretty much legal in large parts of the country.
Well,
now.
Yes, and apparently this guy was not subtle in his attempts. He was just like, everyone thought he was a weirdo because all he did was walk around begging people to sell him anything. One kid got busted for selling a single Vicodin pill for $5 because he pressured him into be like, hey man, whatever you got, and then 2 felony charges for that. It will make you mad. It's really good storytelling. Just look up Vice cop sells weed or tricks autistic weed kid.
All right, we're going to talk about The Shield, episode 8, season 4. But let's start off with Marco Polo, episode 7, during which, while I was watching it still, after I had watched the fight scene between 100 Eyes, is it 100 Eyes or 1,000 Eyes? How many eyes does he have?
He's got all the eyes.
The guy with the eyes. He actually can't see, which is, it's one of those good things, like calling him tiny when he's really big. With the fight between him and the Chancellor, it was like, I think this feeling is enjoyment that I'm having.
It was. And again, this is the Marco Polo is the uncanny valley of quality. It's like, it's so good that why does it look so bad? It's like the fight scenes was amazing. It was beautiful.
Oh, yeah. And those characters, the Chancellor a little less so, but those characters are rich and you want to hate one and you want to cheer for the other. And it was like, okay, here come the big unstoppable forces, right? We've seen one guy beat the best guy in his army, and we've seen the other guy be the invincible trainer who can do amazing things even though he can't see. Like, that's the superhero comic book battle you want out of a kung fu movie, and they gave it to you.
Yeah, dude, and I should have cared so much more than I did. And look, there are gonna be people who complain that it's like, oh, well, if you didn't feel it, it's because you didn't pay enough attention. Legit complaint. And so here's the question: is the burden upon Brian to pay more attention to something that doesn't capture his attention, or is the burden on the product to be a little more interesting so that maybe Brian will remember exactly? And because here's the problem: there's exactly one too many mid-20s beautiful Asian women for me to keep track of, including one that's pretending to be another one with other ones. And I freely admit that
I've honestly only kept track of 2. The Blue Princess, which I was actually touched by the scene where, not touched, I guess is the wrong word, but where the Blue Princess, the actual Blue Princess, kills herself rather than being captured, and then her servant realizes, like, well, they're not going to kill her. But they will kill me because I'm a servant. So I'm going to put on the Blue Princess clothes and pretend to be the Blue Princess so I live. Smart girl.
Right.
And so therefore survives. I loved that scene, so I remember who she is. And of course, she's also the one that went to that went horse riding with Marco Polo. And then I remember the woman. It took me a while to figure out who she was, who had the daughter that the Chancellor is keeping hostage, and he sent her away, and she tried to kill Kublai Khan's wife. And I kind of lost track of her at one point during the series, but then I figured out who she was again. Those are the only 2 that I've kept track of. And honestly, I don't think you have to know the rest of them.
I mean,
I really don't. Like, I know you've read How Star Wars Conquered the Universe.
Yep.
I think George Lucas would really like Marco Polo because you just need to ignore the plot and enjoy the visuals.
Well, and I guess in that regard, I think I've said something along this lines on this program before, but it's like I really have a beef with the color palette of the show. You know, one thing that is extremely subtle that Game of Thrones did very smartly was they have a different color palette for every location. You instantly know when you're at the wall. You instantly know when you're across the narrow sea. You instantly know when you're in King's Landing because of the color temperature that they choose. There's nothing like this, and it's very difficult for me to go straight from Kublai Khan's palace to a place that looks like Kublai Khan's palace, but you don't realize it's not there until you see the Chancellor walk in. That is there's no reason there's no reason that they needed to do that.
Well, it's interesting. You definitely, not color palette wise, you definitely know when you're in the Mongol part of things, like the purely Mongol part, because you see huts and dirt, and they're all dressed in furs, and you're like, Mongols, got it. These are the whole, you know, these are the core Mongols. And then you see Kublai's court, and then you see the Han Emperor's court, and usually they give you an establishing shot of the walled city so that you know, like, oh, I'm in the Han Emperor's court. But still,
the key word was usually. It's the times they don't that is very difficult for me, and it takes me out of the moment, and I have to reset and ignore the last 20 seconds I saw, and then recast it in my mind as to what happened. Now, okay, real quick, back to the positives. That fight scene was dope. I don't understand, for being as amazing a tactician as Thousand Eyes is, why he would do something so stupid as to jump into the fight before it was resolved. Whether or not the Chancellor won, he didn't need to go and take on both guys at once and then be surprised when one of them got killed and the other got away.
Although you could argue, and this is what I thought, because I had that same thought. I'm like, wait, why is he jumping in now? And I thought, well, because he wants to defeat that guy, and the other guy obviously wants to defeat that guy, meaning the Chancellor. So maybe he thinks, well, I'll get a little added benefit from this because it's 2-on-1, essentially.
Well, but then, okay, if that's the case, here's a nutty idea. Don't come out attacking your ally first and then get around to hitting the Chancellor. That made no sense.
Well, he can't see, Brian.
Don't you feed me that line. He's handy capable, better than you and I will ever be. This guy had it down.
Yeah, I'm 100 eyes. He's 100 eyes. I just looked it up on IMDb.
He's million eyes.
He's all the eyes. He has Betty Davis eyes.
That's his name from now on, Betty Davis eyes.
Yeah, we're gonna keep watching. I think at this point it's more of like a completionist obsessive thing, or a like not wanting to let Spoilerin time audience down, maybe, or something. But I'm gonna go upstairs right now as soon as we're done with this show, and I'm gonna watch the next version of it. And frankly, what I'm getting out of it is like, ooh, occasional cool Mongol vista. I actually like the wrestler princess, although I totally was confused by her incident in this episode where she gives in to I did read a summary that explained this. This is the Primer defense, right? I love the movie Primer. I think it's great. I will admit that the movie does not effectively communicate things from beginning to end, and it's only after you read the Wikipedia article that you can truly enjoy Primer as a movie. Same situation here. Apparently, if you read between the lines, she was saying, you question my commitment to you guys? How about I wrestle one of y'all? And then she brings it in. Apparently, this is like whoever wins marries the other, or it was like for her hand in marriage. And so she was like submitting to him, you know, pulling her punches like, I choose you. Right. No, I got that, but I was still confused. Like, but why? Did she really like him?
Man,
like, was that established? Did I miss that part?
He's a strapping lad, that one. He
but like tough. Just then, right? Like all of a sudden she decided she liked him.
Well, you're right, because they would make sense if there was some
kind of... Because they made a big deal about how she let Marco Polo have his way with her.
Yeah, well, and she doesn't seem like the impulsive type to marry just based on like, yeah, that looks good, you know, because especially if she's like, I'll wrestle whoever's among you. Maybe she just has a thing for power and doesn't care, but their conversation later clearly made it sound like the two had a history, right?
Yeah. No, and I know they were friends. We've seen them be cordial, but that's different than like losing a wrestling bout. So you have to marry somebody.
This is
big
how,
step. Do you remember when you lost your wrestling bout to Bonnie and then she had to marry you?
Yeah, I do.
It's a big step, right?
it was a delightful
huge step for me and
Eileen. It was a special night.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. So what else is there?
What else is there?
The little girl. I guess they completely failed in their mission. They ride off with the crippled little girl because it's the nice guy thing to do, and of course, Mongol.
Well, it's also
assassins.
the Han Emperor's daughter, right?
Well, I guess
I know that's not why they said they did it, although that should have been a big part of why they did it.
Yeah. And I guess Marco Polo has a hastily drawn map with a secret entrance to get in later. I mean, that's like, I'd be terrified to come back to Kublai Khan telling the story. Like, all right, let me get this straight. I sent you to kill this guy, and that's it. That's all I told you to do. I told you to put your ear to the ground. I told you to kill the Chancellor. You come back with a doodle on a piece of paper. You come back with a crippled daughter, and also the Chancellor's still totally alive.
Yeah. If I'm Kublai at that point, there's some heads on pikes. Just saying.
Well, consider, although I did find the brief moments of interaction between Kublai and one of his wives, I guess his favorite wife or whatever, the one he actually listens to.
That's his wife. The rest are concubines, I think.
Right.
Pretty sure that's the way it works.
But
he only has the one wife, like she's.
Yeah. No, it's great. Those moments are great. Kublai Khan.
Yeah,
just
Josie
chews up the
Packard,
scenery.
by the way, Twin Peaks. Josie from Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Joan Chen, that's her name. She's great. She didn't have a lot to do in the early parts of the series, but now that they've given her some meatier stuff to work with, I'm like, okay, yes, she belongs right there next to Kublai. This is cool. I liked the conversation she had with the Blue Princess, even though that kind of is floating out in the middle of nowhere and we don't know what's going on with the Blue Princess necessarily. It was an interesting scene taken on its own, I think. Did
they establish what happened to the real Blue Princess's body?
No.
Like, she's just dead.
Oh, well, she killed herself, and then I'm sure they just burned her because she was they thought she was a servant, right?
Right.
So I'm sure they just like torched her along with all the other dead servants.
Oh, got
That's what I would do if I was a
Yeah, no,
Mongol.
that's a good point. I didn't think about it in those terms. That's a really good point. All right, well, we repledge our sword to you, viewers, to watch Marco Polo so you don't have to.
Or if you love it, so that you can get really angry at us because we don't.
It's yeah. Sorry, I don't.
I mean, this is the first episode I can legitimately say I enjoyed. I enjoyed the episode. Like, there was enough in there for me to enjoy. This did not change my opinion.
I enjoyed the second half of this episode. But then what's funny is I enjoyed the second half process of this episode, and then I very much did not like the outcome. I was like, what was the point of all this?
Well, yeah, no, there's a really weird ending. We're like, sure, we'll take a girl, even though.
Well, we failed in our mission, but hey,
and
free girl.
I kind of didn't buy that 100 Eyes would just run and go like, well, I guess I couldn't kill him.
Yeah.
All right, let's get out of here.
Right?
It seemed a little out of character for him.
I agree.
Okay, let's go on to The Shield then, shall we?
Yes, sir.
Episode 8 of Season 4, Cutthroat, wherein I find that Shane doesn't want to kill Vic, and in fact, he's making a play to unseat Antoine and try to make it all better. But of course, Vic still thinks that Shane wants to kill Vic, and yet at the same time, Captain Rawlings is putting the pressure on for him and Shane to work together, even though Vic has been put on the bench because of the video of him in the church. And Aceveda is probably at his least likable in the scenes that he has with the escort woman. And I still can't tell from this episode whether those were like extended role playing or if he's just really an asshole.
Well, I mean, they've already established that it's kind of therapy, right? And he's sort of, I don't think I'm giving away anything like that. That all comes to a head. You are seeing him each episode previously get more and more aggressive, play the role more and more. That definitely reaches a head at some point. That's all I'll say about that.
And there's a great scene where he could have played it just straight. He wouldn't have had to even compromise with Captain Rawlings. and she sticks the knife in and twists it on her. Like, he aggressively does not want to cooperate with her. He's even going after Julian, like, hey, I know you're making a good stand here. Don't worry. He's building allies with the disaffected to Captain Rawlings.
Which is very weird to see somebody, you know, so harsh in his teasing of people to turn around and like that bully from elementary school, turn around and be like, don't worry, we razz each other here. I'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. I mean, it's I don't know. It's weird to see him. You know, you almost want to believe him and buy into it.
Now, the Vic Mackie story is doing what the Vic Mackie story does, which is like lead you one direction and then jerk you another direction. So I'm not shocked that Shane had a turnabout. I absolutely love the scene where Vic has got the gun on him and like, looks like it's you, if it's you or me, you know, and you've seen Vic Mackie shoot another cop. You believe that he will shoot Shane if he has to, because you've seen how angry he is and how he's willing to just storm off alone and how he's ignoring all the advice of his friends who are like, you need to stay with us. You need to let us protect you. So I get that. And I love that scene. But I also, at this point with the shield, that's like kind of like, oh, okay, I'm being surprised, which I expect and I love. What was most interesting to me about this episode is that Wag and Wims have been boring the crap out of me. I feel like they are not picking up the ball, that storyline. And this episode, which I think it was written by Dean White. Story by Randy Huggins and Glenn Mazzara. Great job, you guys. Because without saying a thing, without having these lines of like, why are you still so mad at me? Well, you just need to relax. You didn't have them say anything about their relationship. And you saw Wagenbach just done with Wims. Just like, don't listen to her. We're done here. Let's go. And like undermining her and her looking at him without having to explain it. You knew exactly what was going on there. And then you see them with the coffee, with the coffee guy who throws the coffee on people to rob them. You see them kind of start to get easier with each other and start to work with each other again and start to get past their issues again without having to throw it in your face. Really elegantly done in the sidelines of what the rest of the episode is much more important to that. But I thought that was really nicely a nice way to progress that storyline finally. So
at this point, how would you rate this episode? Because there's something I want to bring up on the this is out of the show itself. But if you were going to give this a rating, you're doing your own Shield journey, what would you rate it?
Yeah, so we're talking about the CIs getting murdered and Vic wanting in there to like bust some balls and stop the murders of the CIs and him getting held back and then him having to deal with the Shane thing and try to hide the Shane thing and then and you've got IAD being held back. Should they come in? Should they not? By the way, excellent twist at the end where the IAD undercover guy is welcomed in by Captain Rawlings. I'd say this is probably up there. Give it an 8 out of 10, maybe.
So what's interesting is if you search for the Shield Season 4 Cutthroat, you'll find a number of reviews, including there's the IMDb review that has it at 5.2 out of 10. Now, we've talked before about how Season 4 is the lowest reviewed on IMDb, but then just below it, with 140 votes, you'll see TV.com has it rated as 9.2. And in between, it turns out that the folks over at the AV Club are doing their own version of watching through the Shield the way Tom is. And if you scan through their analysis of Cutthroat, they say that they gave it an A. For the episode, and they talk about how they suspect that part of the reason so many people rated the fourth season, specifically this episode, so low is because this represents the shift, or in general, this is the shifting in tone to the more cerebral aspects of the game, the chess game, the Game of Thrones before we all knew of Game of Thrones, and away from the visceral, Hulk smash Vic Mackie that we had seen early on, which to me, I think I'm glad
smash, but okay,
thing smash. That's true. Touche. I'm glad to hear someone put to words what I had been feeling, because it starts off like a shocking cartoon, which, again, that's what didn't impress you at the beginning. You're like, yeah, I've seen gritty cartoon cops before, but what it becomes is this unbelievable nested chess game, and I'm glad to understand why the season I liked so much was so poorly rated. But I guess, we have the benefit of hindsight,
Yeah. No, it makes sense to me, actually, when you put it that way. Almost forgot. Vic comes up with $15,000 to help his child get because they're going to drop a case to get their younger child into a program. We don't even blink. We have no idea where that money came from in this episode. And in an earlier season, the reason it reminded me of that, in an earlier season, I would have chalked that up to like, I got to have a MacGuffin for your slam bang story. And now, 4 seasons in, I'm like, oh, we're going to be explained that. And that's going to be a problem somehow. Like, nobody comes up with $15,000 in this show that doesn't cause a world of hurt for a bunch of other people later.
Yeah, and I guess the options are he could have just swiped it from the money train money,
right?
Or he could be the kind of guy who squirrels away money for a rainy day, which I don't know if that's the case.
Which you think we would have known about before.
Yeah.
So the other option I thought of is that he's in like I don't care anymore mode, and he goes and puts a squeeze on somebody, maybe takes a loan from somebody that he shouldn't be taking a loan. I don't know. That money was folded up and dirty though, wherever it came from.
Yeah, sweet dirty money.
Sweet dirty money.
Dude, I'm so glad to. It's so fun to hear all this from your perspective.
And it's why I wanted to keep going, even in the early days when you're like, oh, it feels like homework. It never really felt like homework. I always enjoyed the episodes. But I knew, like, look, Brian Brushwood, Jeff Kanata, and a million other people love this show. So I know it's going to pay off if I stick with it, and it's totally doing that.
Good. That is completely awesome. All right, man, I guess that's it for a spoiler in time. Hey, are you going to stick around? Oh, do you want to spoil Hacking the System? Do you have any thoughts? You watched the live stream.
Oh, yeah. No, I watched the first 2 episodes. I guess it's the 3rd and 4th episodes, right? But the first 2 episodes of the new season. And just I it's gonna sound like I'm kissing ass or blowing hot air up my friend's skirt.
That's a common saying, right? That's something 2 bros do, right?
No, I am really impressed with this show. It is so well researched, so well done. The nuances of the kind of information you're providing, the lines that I know you have to walk because it's on television, and yet still able to deliver helpful information that is true and doesn't gloss over specific things. It's entertaining. It's fun. You do a great job, as I knew you would. Jason does a great job as well. It's really enjoyable. It's really well done.
Well, good. Well, for anybody listening, every Monday night, we're doing live watch parties, which we've talked before about how strange it is that people like watching other people play video games. Now we have a situation where people are going to watch other people watch television, and we're going to talk and give live commentary, give behind-the-scenes rocket sauce, and sometimes Tom Merritt and Justin Robert Young join us. Next week, we're hoping to get one of the writers on the show to join us and hang out, but we'll definitely be doing that tonight. That's 10 Eastern, 9 Central every Monday. Please tell your friends. Please use hashtag Hacking the System to tell them about it. And let's keep that energy up, people. I like doing the show. Let's do more.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you later.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.